Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in to my official coin flip bracket here for 2024, where I go through and put it up to chance. Every single game decided via a coin flip. If it's heads, the higher seed moves on. If it's tails, the lower seed moves on. Technically, it is 50-50, but if you think about it, normally heads is like 51% chance, so I want to give the higher seed maybe a slight advantage, but of course it is 50% chance, let's be honest. We do have some nice natural light coming in. With snow on the ground, it seems to have brightened this room, and it's very nice. So, guys, we'll see what happens. There might be a 16 seed that goes deep, maybe a 15 seed. Last year, the coin flip bracket finished in like the 66th percentile, so not terrible. Surprised. But I have this little tab here, so this should be very easy to do. Go back and forth. We're going to refresh this. I guess I flipped it once, but all right, the first game, it is UConn taking on Stenson. Heads, it's UConn advancing. Tails, it's the 16 over the 1. And this thing is really annoying to look at. And it is tails. So we already have a 16 over a 1. Not surprising, it is what it is. FAU Northwestern. If it's heads, FAU moves on. If it's tails, it will be Northwestern. FAU advances. So FAU, back-to-back years, they're in an 8v9 game. They win, and they don't even have to face a 1 seed in the second round. Amazing for them. Next, it is San Diego State. UAB heads. San Diego State moves on, and they will lose to UAB, the University of Birmingham, Alabama. They continue their hot streak. Congratulations. Next, it is Auburn taking on Yale. Yale out of the Ivy. Can they pull the upset? No. This is a semi-realistic bracket. You got to keep it realistic. We know Auburn. They're loved analytically. How about BYU? Taking on Duquesne. Could Duquesne pull it off? And they do. Duquesne defeats BYU in a shocker. Look at that. UAB and Duquesne and Stenson. A lot of upsets early. Illinois and Morehead State. Who will win in the 3v14 game? It is Morehead State. Another upset. Okay, now it's getting a little bit off the rails. Let's reel it back in. Well, this 7v10 game, this is a pick-em anyways. It doesn't really matter. It will be Drake, the 10 seed. I think Drake is favorites in that game. They're like 2-point favorites. Iowa State heads, and we do get Iowa State. So that's a nice, look at Iowa State. They're like the last team, I guess also Auburn as well. Next, you do have North Carolina take, okay, so I do have to do the first 4 game. If it's heads, Howard advances because Howard's 3.5-point favorites, so I'm giving them heads. Wagner is tails. And it is heads. So Howard will advance to face North Carolina. Now Howard is tails. North Carolina is heads because they're the 1 seed versus the 16. Will North Carolina, the 1 seed, advance? They will. All right, now this bracket is getting a little bit more realistic. You can understand some trolling early on. It wants to be more realistic. Mississippi State versus Michigan State 8v9 game. And it does have Mississippi State, so it doesn't like Izzo. Next, you do have St. Mary's and Grand Canyon. Maybe a 12 over 5. I don't think so. Well, yes, it does like Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon will be moving on. 6v11. This is a perfect time for an upset. You're good now. See, this thing is just... Oh, you know what? I skipped one. All right, well, that was technically supposed to be Alabama-Charleston. Now we can get the upset with New Mexico. Possibly an upset here. And there it is. New Mexico advances. I did not rig that. I just forgot about Alabama-Charleston. Baylor versus Colgate. Heads, it's Baylor. Tails, it will be the Patriot League. And how about Colgate finally breaking through and winning a game in the tournament? Amazing. Next, you do have Dayton taking on Nevada. Heads, it's Dayton, even though they're probably underdogs in this game. And it will be Nevada. Very smart pick there. Arizona and Long Beach. Come on, let's be realistic here. Let's get a heads. Let's keep it realistic. And see, that now it's being more realistic. It's given itself a chance. It's got a chance to perform well. And now it's Houston and Longwood. Let's not do something stupid here. Let's not do so. There we go. This is actually turning out pretty well now. Nebraska versus A&M. Heads, Nebraska moves on. And it is Nebraska facing Houston. Realistic matchup there in the second round. Could see an upset here. Wisconsin versus James Madison. And it is Wisconsin beating James Madison. The 5 seed moves on. I don't agree with that. Duke versus Vermont. Could see an upset here. Heads. Yep, there's the upset. Vermont moves on. Defeats Duke. Texas Tech versus NC State. Really a pick-em type game. Texas Tech, I can respect that. Next, it is Kentucky and Oakland. Heads, Kentucky moves on. And how about Kentucky? Very little amount of upsets here. This is nice. This is a nice region for it. It's doing well. Florida, well, actually, I got to do this game first. So, Boise State is tails, Colorado is heads. Colorado's the favorite in that game. And it will be Colorado facing Florida. Now Florida is heads, Colorado is tails. And it will be Florida advancing. It's doing well now. Marquette versus Western Kentucky. We could see an upset here. And it does like Marquette. So that was a very chalky region there. Really just one upset, I would say, in terms of that. Now you do have Montana State taking on Grambling. Heads, it's Montana State. Tails, it's Grambling. And it is Grambling taking on Purdue. Now, let's be realistic about this. Come on. And it is going to be Grambling defeating Purdue. So Purdue loses for a second straight year to a 1 seed. Very sad to see. Very sad. Utah State, the bracket is wide open for them. As it heads for Utah State, it is. Utah State will face Grambling in the second round. Gonzaga and McNeese heads. It's Gonzaga. Upset potential here. There it is. McNeese advances the 12 seed. Kansas and Samford could get another potential upset, and it is. Samford advances. Wow, so now it's going rogue now. It's picking all the upsets. Now this is a perfect upset pick. Now you can pick the upset with Oregon. There you go. Oregon advances. We could see another upset with Creighton and Akron. We'll see here. Is it heads for Creighton? Yeah, I knew that was going to happen. It finally is heads. Next, we do have Virginia taking on Colorado State. Heads is going to be Colorado State. Tails will be Virginia. And it will be Virginia moving on to take on Texas. Heads is Texas. Tails is Virginia. And it is Texas. Very smart. Next, you do have Tennessee and St. Peter's. And it is Tennessee. So you know what? There's a mixture there. There are some teams that potentially, this bracket might not be terrible. This could be a pretty good bracket. We will see. But obviously, the higher seed is going to be heads. So FAU will be heads. Stenson will be tails. We've got 20 heads and 16 tails. And again, it always seems like there's going to be more heads than tails. It's just, I know it's 50-50, but it always seems like that's how it works out. So Stenson is still going to be tails. Obviously, they're the 16 seed. And it will be FAU moving on again. Could FAU make another Final Four run? We will see. UAB taking on Auburn. Auburn is heads. They're the higher seed. And they will be moving on. Semi-realistic matchup, honestly. How about Duquesne? Duquesne is heads now. Morehead State is tails. Look at this. 11 versus 14. And it is Morehead State advancing there. Drake and Iowa State 10v2. Heads is Iowa State. And it will be Drake defeating Iowa State. So it's either going to be Morehead State or Drake, unfortunately, that make it there. Next, you do have North Carolina and Mississippi State. Heads is North Carolina. And it will be Mississippi State moving on in that one. Grand Canyon taking on Alabama. And it will be Alabama advancing there. Next, you do have New Mexico and Colgate. Listen, heads here would be, this is legitimately could happen if it's heads. And it is heads. New Mexico advances. Nevada and Arizona. If it's heads, this is very realistic. Very realistic. This thing's an idiot. It's going to be Nevada moving on there. Moving on to Houston taking on Nebraska. Give me a heads. Give yourself a chance. There you go. Give yourself a chance with Houston. Nevada and Vermont. I could see Vermont moving on in something like this. And there it is. Exactly. Vermont moves on. Next, you do have Texas Tech and Kentucky. Kentucky is heads. It is Texas Tech moving on, advancing in that one. Florida and Marquette. Certainly, I could see Florida winning this game. We'll see. And it does like Florida. So, very nice pick there. Very nice. Lucky pick. Grambling versus Utah State. Oh, no. Nothing like this. Nothing like, there we go. Utah State advances there. McNeese and Samford in a 12v13 game. And it is Samford, the 13 seed, because it's tails, moves on. Oregon and Creighton, relatively realistic matchup here. And it will be Oregon beating Creighton. I can see that happening. Now you do have the Texas versus Tennessee matchup. Texas is tails. And Texas moves on. That could honestly happen. I'm not even lying. Some of these are not bad. Like Oregon versus Texas is decent. New Mexico being there is okay. I don't think Nevada is going to make it. This is not. That's not. Florida Marquette or Florida Texas Tech is kind of realistic. That's not going to happen. FAU Auburn, yeah. I mean, some of these are semi-realistic. We'll see. Now it's FAU versus Auburn. Let's just eliminate FAU. Haven't we heard enough about FAU? They were in the thing last year. Come on. Give me a heads. There it is. Auburn advances, and now it's Morehead State taking on Drake. Heads is Drake, which Drake may go on a crazy run, and they possibly could. Drake versus Auburn now. I'm going to fill it out like, well, no, I'll go down. Mississippi State taking on Bama. Heads, it's Bama. Tails, it's Mississippi State. And it is Mississippi State, the 8 seed advancing New Mexico and Nevada. And it is the 11 seed by a hair, New Mexico beating Nevada. New Mexico possibly to the Final Four. Houston and Vermont. Let's be realistic about this, folks. Come on. There it is. Houston advances the 1 seed. So they do have a 1 seed alive right now. Now it's Texas Tech and Florida. And this is realistic. This is a realistic region. I'm not even lying. This is good. And they do have Texas Tech. I would pick Florida there, but I can understand that. Utah State taking on Samford in an 8v13 game. And it is Samford moving on the 13 seed. Oregon and Texas, semi-realistic matchup here. Semi-realistic. And it is Oregon, the 11 seed. So, you know, 13 versus 11, 8 versus 11, 1 versus 6. Yeah, this is a rough one. Next, you do have Auburn taking on Drake. Auburn is heads for a trip to the Final Four. And it is going to be a double-digit seed making the Final Four with Drake advancing right there. Next, you do have Mississippi State taking on New Mexico. Mississippi State is heads. And it will be New Mexico. So that's 2 double-digit seeds now. A 10 versus 11 into the Final Four. Houston and Texas Tech. So this will be a good matchup. And it is Houston advancing. This bracket, listen, if Houston wins the title, it might do decent. Samford versus Oregon. Heads is Oregon, tails is Samford. And it is Oregon advancing. So now we're on to the Final Four. 10 versus 11, 1 versus 11. Drake is heads, New Mexico is tails. Who will be going to the national championship? And it is Drake University. They're going to the title. They will be taking on either Houston, who's heads. Oregon is tails. And it is Oregon. So we have a 10v11 matchup. Drake taking on Oregon. Drake is heads. Oregon will be tails. And we will see who is the national title winner here. And it is Oregon University winning the national championship. The over-under, if it's heads, I'm going to go the over-under being 160. If it's tails, I'm going to have the over-under be 145. And it is 145. And that will be the bracket right there. Now, this bracket is probably not going to do well, I'll be honest. It's just for fun. That was just what ends up happening with Oregon beating Drake and a nice little fight. I think New Mexico may have a way outside chance of making the Final Four. I don't think it can happen with Drake. I don't think it can happen with Oregon. Obviously, Houston can make it, but then it had Houston immediately losing. Its one chance was Houston winning the title because it actually did have a 1 seed going. But then it had a bunch of other double-digit seeds. A few 16 seeds won, but overall, that is just a little fun coin flip bracket. But guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.